Walk down the cleaning aisle of any hardware store and you will see them. Small white tubs of crystals, sitting there on the shelf, $12, $15, $18 a piece. You buy one, carry it home, set it down in your damp basement or your closet or your boat, and a few weeks later the crystals are gone, melted away into a tub of liquid at the bottom, and you throw the whole thing in the trash and go buy another, and another, and another, year in and year out. $40, $60, $80 a year, every year, for a tub of salt and a plastic bowl. Now I want you to sit with this a moment. The white crystals in that tub are a thing you can buy in a 40-pound bag at any pool supply store, or hardware store, or farm store for about $4. The very same crystals, the very same chemistry, marked up 3 and 4 times over, dressed up in a branded tub, and sold to you as a thing to throw away. And nobody ever tells you what I'm about to tell you today. That when those crystals have done their work and turned to liquid, you are not finished with them, not even close. You can take that liquid, set it in your oven for a few hours, and the very same crystals come right back out, dry and ready to work again. The compound never wore out at all. It just got full. And there is no money in telling you that. My name is Elias Yoder. I am Amish and I farm here in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. Now I want to be honest with you right at the start, the way I always am. This is not something my grandfather did. The crystals I'm going to show you came out of a chemist's bag, not out of a barn loft, and so I will not pretend to you that it is some old Amish secret handed down through the family. That would be a lie, and you can spot one of those easy enough. But this lives by the oldest rule my grandfather ever taught me. Waste nothing, and never let yourself be sold the same thing twice that you could have used forever. My people have always known how to handle the damp, by ventilation, by lime-washed cellar walls, by hanging the cellar door open on a dry day, by where a man chooses to put his spring house. This is a newer tool than all of that, but it follows the old rule, and once you know it, you will not be reaching for those throwaway tubs at the store ever again. Stay with me. Let me first say a true word about what damp actually does, because most folks think it is only a smell. A closet that smells musty, a basement that smells of the earth. But it is a great deal more than that. Damp air sitting in a closed space is doing quiet, slow harm the whole time you are not looking at it. It feeds the mildew on your leather boots and the green spots on the wall behind the dresser. It rusts the tools in your shed and the springs in your bed. It softens the cardboard boxes you stored up in the attic, and it rots the paper in the books down in your basement. It darkens good wood. It puts that particular sour smell into a boat you closed up for the winter, or a hunting cabin you locked in October and walked back into come April. The folks who study these things say that once the air in a closed space gets damper than about 60 parts in 100, mold can start growing on a surface in a day or two, and you cannot scrub your way out of that. You have to take the water out of the air itself. The only question is how. The big stores will sell you a powered machine for $200 or $300 that does it. A compressor, a fan, a drain, a thing you must plug into the wall and listen to and pay to run. And for a flooded basement, that machine is the right tool, and I will tell you so honestly. But for the everyday damp, the closet, the small basement, the boat in winter, the cabin in storage, the shed, the gun safe, the camper, the storage unit, the pantry. There is something far simpler and cheaper, and it needs no power at all. It is a bucket and $4 of salt. So let me tell you about the salt itself, because the chemistry is the real magic of it, and once you see it, you will not forget it. The crystals you want are called calcium chloride. You can buy a bag of it at any pool supply store, hardware store, or farm supply for about $4. It is the very same crystals they use to melt the ice off the roads in winter, the same the food companies use to keep their pickles crisp in the jar. Get the pellet or the flake kind and not the powder. Now here is what this stuff does, and it surprises folks every single time they watch it work. Calcium chloride is what the chemists call thirsty. They have a longer word for it, but thirsty is the right word. It pulls the water vapor right out of the air around it, with a strength that most other things simply cannot match. Now those little silica gel packets you find tucked in a shoebox or a bag of beef jerky, those work too, but they will absorb perhaps a quarter of their own weight in water before they are spent and done. Calcium chloride just keeps on drinking. It can take in many times its own weight in water. Under the right conditions, the chemistry keeps right on going until the crystals have dissolved themselves clean into a puddle of brine. They do not just stop and quit part way. They keep working all the way down to liquid. And here is the small marvel of it. It needs no electricity, no fan, no motor, no pump. You set it in a closed space and it works away silently while you sleep. It does not whine, it does not hum, and it does not raise your power bill by a single penny. It just sits there and quietly pulls the wet right out of the air. Here is how you build it, and it truly is this simple. You need a bag of calcium chloride, $4 at the pool supply store. You need a bucket or a deep bowl, and you have got one of those already. And you need something to keep the crystals up out of the brine as they melt, because if they sit down in their own water, they stop working. A plastic colander, the kind your wife strains her noodles in, set down into the top of the bucket so it rests on the rim. That is the whole thing. Or you can use 2 food-safe pails stacked, with holes drilled in the bottom of the top one. Either one works fine. Pour the calcium chloride pellets into the colander, 2 or 3 inches deep. Set it on top of the bucket. Put the whole thing in the closet or the corner of the basement or wherever the damp is worst, and you walk away. That is the build. What will happen over the next days and weeks? The crystals will start to look wet, then to clump together, and then slowly to melt, to turn into a clear liquid that drips down through the colander into the bucket below. And that liquid is the water that used to be in the air of that room. You watch the bucket fill, and you are watching the room dry. When the colander is empty and the bucket is full of liquid, you have not lost a thing. You have just gathered up all the damp those crystals could hold. Now a few honest, practical words, because I will not let you build it wrong. The first, each bucket only works on the air right around it, say 3 to 5 feet. For a closet or a small room, 1 is fine. For a larger basement, you set out 2 or 3 of them, spread along the walls. Calcium chloride does not pull from clear across a room the way a fan would. It works on the air that is close by. The second, put the bucket down on something the brine cannot harm. That liquid dripping into the bucket is salty water, and salt water is corrosive. It will pit metal, and it will stain concrete. So set it on a board, or a glass tray, or an old plate. Do not set it right down on the nice wood floor or on metal. A cheap little caution. And the third, keep the crystals up out of reach of children and pets. They are not deadly, but they will irritate the eyes and the skin with much contact, and the brine especially so. Treat it the way you would treat the lye or the boric acid I have spoken of before on this channel. A useful tool, kept up where it belongs. That is the whole build. $4, a few minutes, and a bucket. No power at all. Now here's the part the company that sells you the throwaway tub will never once put on their label. The part that turns a $4 bag into a thing you can use again and again and again. When the crystals have all dissolved down into that bucket of brine, you might think the job is done, that you toss the brine out and go buy yourself a new bag. But you do not have to. That brine is the very same calcium chloride. It is just full of water now, and if you drive the water back out of it, the dry crystals come right back to you. The compound itself is not used up. It cannot be used up. You just have to take the water back out, and the way you do that is with heat. You pour the brine carefully into a glass baking dish. A glass dish and not a metal one, because that salty water will eat away at metal. You set your oven to a good hot temperature, somewhere around 350 to 400 degrees, and you slide the dish in and leave it a couple of hours, 2 or 3, until all the water has steamed away and what is left in the bottom of the dish is dry crystals once more. Let it cool. Then knock the dry crystals back out into a sealed jar, a glass jar with a tight lid, because if you leave them sitting out in the open air, they will start pulling the water right back in that very minute. And a few honest cautions on this step too, because you ought to know them. Open a window, or run the kitchen fan while you do it, because all of that water is going somewhere. It is steaming out into your kitchen air, and you do not want to dump the damp you just pulled out of the basement straight back into your kitchen. Vent it on out. Use glass, not metal, and I will say it twice because it matters. The brine is salty and corrosive, and it will eat away at a metal pan over time. Glass is the right choice, and it is easier to clean besides. And do not go cranking the oven any hotter to try and rush it. Push it too hot, and you start to change the chemistry of the salt itself, and then it will not work as well for you. Slow and steady is the right way. And one honest thing the salesman will never say to you, you can do this many times, but not forever. Each time around, the crystals come back just a touch less perfect than they were, because a little is always lost in the doing, especially in a very damp climate. But many cycles you will get out of one $4 bag easily. Many months, often a year or more, out of the same crystals, instead of throwing them in the trash after a few short weeks. That right there is the whole difference between a thing they sell you and a thing you own. I will tell you the thing that turned me to this in the first place. A friend of mine, an English fellow, who keeps a little cabin up in the hills, closed it up one October the way he always did, and when he came back the following spring, he opened the door to a heartbreak. The good wool blankets on the beds were spotted through with mildew. His leather boots by the door had gone green and soft. The paperback books on the shelf had swelled up fat and sour, and there was a smell in the place that took him half the summer to chase out. He had spent good money on those throwaway tubs for years, one at a time, and never had quite enough of them going to keep up. So the next fall I set him up with 4 buckets of calcium chloride, one in each corner and one by the beds, and told him how to bake the brine back to crystals come spring. He has closed that cabin up 5 winters running now, and every spring he walks into a place that smells like a place, not like a cellar. $4 of salt and a colander. It saved him more in ruined blankets and boots the first winter than the whole thing cost him. Now I owe you the honest limits of it, because I will not have you build this and then be disappointed that it did not do what no $4 bucket of salt could ever do. This is for damp, not for wet. If your basement walls are running with water because the foundation leaks, or the cellar floods, or there is water coming in from the outside, then this is not the tool for that job. That is a job for fixing the leak, and yes, possibly for a powered dehumidifier. This bucket is for the everyday damp that hangs in the air of a closed space. and it works best in enclosed spaces, a closet, a small basement room with the door kept shut, a gun safe, a tackle box, a boat or camper that has been shut up for the winter, a pantry, a storage unit, a tool drawer, a cabin closed up tight between visits. Smaller and closed is best. A big open room with the doors and windows swinging in and out all the day long, the bucket cannot keep up with that. Use it where the air sits still. And it is a quiet tool, not a fast one. A powered machine pulls a lot of water out of the air in a hurry with its fan. The bucket works slow and steady, a little at a time, drying the air around it day after day, week after week. But for most of what most folks actually need, keeping a closet dry, keeping the mildew out of a stored camper, keeping the sour smell out of a pantry, slow and steady is exactly the right speed. Cheaper, quieter, no power, and it never breaks. But know what it is and what it is not. If you have got one bad wet basement with a real flood, you may want both. A powered machine for the heavy work, and these buckets to hold things dry afterward. They work together just fine. Honest is better than impressive. Now I want to take a moment because this is the part that matters, and it is bigger than the $4. Think about what this whole little setup really means. A bag of salt at the hardware store, $4. A bowl and a colander out of your own kitchen, nothing at all. Reusable again and again with an hour or two of oven heat. And there, on the other side of that same aisle, an entire industry, billions of dollars a year, built on selling you that same $4 of salt in a small plastic tub for $12 or $15 and asking you to throw it away and buy it again next month. The compound did not change. The chemistry did not change. The one and only thing that changed is whether you know that you can pour the liquid into your oven and bring the crystals right back. This is the pattern I keep coming back to on this channel, because once you see it, you start to see it everywhere. There is good money in selling a man a thing he must keep on buying. There is no money at all in telling him how to make one bag last him a year. So nobody prints "this can be regenerated" on the side of the tub, and nobody runs a commercial showing you the oven trick. And a whole nation buys the same bag of salt 15 times over when they could have bought it just the once. Now that is not exactly a conspiracy. Nobody is hiding it away in a vault. It is simply that a system that profits from your repeat buying will never once go out of its way to teach you how to stop. My people have always tried to live the other way around. A thing that can be fixed, you fix. A thing that can be reused, you reuse. A tool you bought once ought to serve you, and then serve your children after you. The bucket and the salt are not Amish. I told you that plain at the start. But the habit of mind behind them, make it last, and do not be sold the same thing twice. That is as old as my grandfather's toolbox, and as old as any plain home in this whole county. So here is what I want you to do. This weekend, go to the pool supply store or the hardware store and ask for a bag of calcium chloride pellets. $4. Take it home. Find a bucket and a colander or a deep bowl you have lying around already. Pour in 2 or 3 inches of the pellets. Set the colander down on the bucket and put it in the dampest closet or basement corner you have got. Set another one out in the boat, if you have one, or the camper, or the gun safe, or the storage unit, wherever the damp has been a trouble to you. Then come back a few weeks later. Watch the bucket fill. Pour the brine off into a glass baking dish. Put it in the oven for 2 or 3 hours with the window open. Let it cool, and knock the dry crystals back into a glass jar with a tight lid. The same $4 working for you all over again. And tell me down in the comments, what is the dampest spot in your house? The one you have been throwing those store-bought tubs at all these years? The basement, the boat, the cabin, the gun safe, the closet that always smells? And once you have built one of these and run a cycle through it, come back and tell me how it went, how much liquid you caught in the bucket, and what kind of climate you live in. I read every single one, and the things you all teach one another down in those comments help every new person learn it faster. Next time, since we have been speaking of moisture in closed spaces, I'm going to show you the old plain way my people built cellars and pantries that stayed dry, without any salt and without any machine at all. The lime-washed walls, the cross-draft, the placement of it, the small habits that kept a food storage room sweet and dry for generations. It is the older cousin to today's bucket, and the two of them together can keep your storage spaces in good order for a very long time. Until then, use a thing once and then use it again. Waste nothing. And remember that the people who built this country with their hands knew things we are only now just starting to remember.